Bike Safety Podcast with Vance and Bart.
It's a trap. There's no comfort fitting in a fake safety that no one believes in.
So, Civil War, for it or against it?
The old one or the new one?
We don't do timely stuff, so the old one. Yay or nay for the war?
I'm going to say against.
Siding with the rebels, I see.
So you're in favor of the War of Northern Aggression?
No, not at all. Very privileged. How about the Pledge of Allegiance in schools? For or against?
I'm going to say against as well.
Yeah, me too. I remember thinking that people who were against that were assholes who hated the United States. Boy, was I wrong. Well, I take that back because it very well could have been that people who were against it were assholes and whatnot, but not
Or
for
against
that.
the United States. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true as well.
But not necessarily for not doing the pledge or not wanting to do the pledge. Those things can be separate.
Real quick, though, on that Civil War take,
Uh-huh.
I'm
which
realizing
one?
now that I don't actually ever hear anyone say that they're against that war. Folks generally say one side or the other.
Those bastards.
You know what I mean, though? Like,
Yeah, because the war happened. So, like, people just take sides. It's kind of like our two-party system. Where it's like, oh, I'm on this side or this side. And then me and you are like, no. They're both doing evil things. Stop it.
well, it just is fascinating to me that folks are generally not going through the intellectual exercise of how could this war have been avoided. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like everyone takes it as a foregone conclusion. And I think your point is valid in that it's history. It's in the past. It already did happen. So that's the assumption. But
No,
I know
I'm
this
with
is kind
you.
of like,
I genuinely wonder why that's not more the question than which side was in the right and which side was in the wrong. I always find that to be fascinating how people forget that typically anytime a war is started, there has been at least close to half the people, the population, being against the war even starting on both sides. And then as soon as the war starts and then ends or whatever, they forget that those people ever existed that didn't want it in the first place. I imagine they'll do it with all of our 20-year wars and our helping genocide happen in Yemen and what else are we doing right now? Oh, yeah, Ukrainian weapons deals, and we're still in Syria too, right? Yeah.
yep.
So Syria.
But boy, oh boy, are we out of Afghanistan.
Yeah. Boy, are we ever. I mean, not our stuff. I mean, machine guns and tanks and helicopters and all that stuff is still there. But they're coming after our pistols now, so apparently we have assault pistols. I'm sure you heard that one on the news.
I actually haven't.
There was a shooting, and a person used an assault pistol, which is defined as a pistol that is semi-automatic with that is magazine fed.
I'm going to be honest. I can't tell if you're joking.
No, it's for real. It was described in the article about the shooting as an assault pistol, a semi-automatic magazine-fed assault pistol. It was just a pistol. Well, obviously, I mean, there's no such thing, right? but yeah, that's how it was described in this article about the shooting, and then we got a lot of press until it was like, oh, it wasn't the shooter was it was Asian on Asian crime, and just didn't fit any of the boxes where they wanted to go forward with it anymore. So the mass shooting thing kind of died off pretty quickly. I guess it was the Lunar New Year's, which is a Chinese thing. Am I right?
Contrary to popular belief, I am not of Chinese descent.
Well, if it's not a Chinese thing, that wouldn't help anyway.
I am going to start putting assault in front of everything that I don't like or want. So if I like go to order a burrito, I'm going to be like, no assault tomatoes, please.
No assault taxes, please.
Ooh, we should start doing the like Gen Z version of it, because we keep saying taxation is theft, but we should say taxation is violence.
Okay. I mean, it makes more sense than a lot of the other shit they say. It's at least taken under the threat of violence.
That's true. But anyway, I don't want all this assault Chinese raining on our parade, because I do have some good news. And
Okay.
I'm curious to get your take on it. I'll preface this actually with a bit of bad news from history.
Bad news from history. Is this kind of like drunk history? Are we going to get a skit?
It's been a busy week, and I haven't had enough time to write one.
Boo! Everybody in the chat is not happy with you. They're all saying that he's focused on other things besides them. They're not happy with you.
Well, I'm happy to write one this week and put it up on my OnlyFans if you all want to subscribe. But no, this history is not drunk, but it is recent. I just want to give everybody a bit of a preface.
I'm curious. I'm really curious about your OnlyFans.
I'll put it in the show notes.
It's just Bart showing you how big his shoes are. You know what they say about a guy with big shoes?
He's got a lot of subscribers.
Yeah, his dick's big, or he has a red nose. That's what my grandpappy always told me.
Weirdly, I've never heard that, but that's actually kind of funny. Your grandpappy says a lot of things, but that's one of the better ones. What was his one about how much a picture's worth?
13 cents, roundabout.
I'd love to have him on as a guest.
Oh, we will definitely have to do that. We will get my grandpappy on for sure, but only after you do this skit. So go ahead.
So recent history, you know this, but I don't know that we've actually acknowledged it or talked about it on the show. But many, many moons ago, when we started this podcast, we put a website, all the things together where every week we would post the episode. And it was probably 5, 6, maybe even 10 episodes in before we were ranked number 1 for the phrase fake safety.
Okay.
Which admittedly is not that hard to do. Luckily, our podcast is not called Discount Handbags.
You don't have to keep making fun of me for trying to name it that. Let it go.
So anyway, round about episode 10, don't quote me on the exact one, but around that time, we fall completely off the first few pages of, I'm just going to say, a large search engine, because I'm going to be sharing some things from some friends of mine and the way that they track transcripts and things. It's probably better that I not say it. So I conferred with a few of my friends, and they validated my assumption that we aren't necessarily on a list, but we were tagged as, let's call it, misinformation.
I'm so proud of it. What was the bad part?
So even though we put in a good bit of work and do even things like paid ads and placement and things like that, we're nowhere to be seen as far as certain ranks go. Until a few weeks ago, I got a note to recheck our status. And while we had not gone back up to number 1, we were, I believe, in the top 3.
Okay.
And I asked why this had happened. And essentially it goes like this. Elon has been doing this thing with the Twitter files. I think most everyone has been following that, but it's basically just him talking about some of this government intervention and censorship and stuff like that, and he's just giving that to various different journalists. Apparently, this has been making small but slow and steady waves into various different corners of tech, such that no one else wants to get caught out in the same way. So they are slowly releasing some of these manual oversights. So there are tweaks to the algorithm and things can get tagged, but a lot of the things that had been manually tagged for things like misinformation or other stuff like that are slowly getting put back into feeds and into algorithms, so that when their time comes, they will not suffer the same fate as Twitter.
Okay. So
I guess the point of all that is to say that it doesn't really matter how we rank.
Okay. I mean, I guess it does, right?
Well,
I mean, what does that do?
I think I'd like to look at it more generally for small businesses versus large businesses.
Okay.
Or even large entities. What I mean to say is that if Donald Trump gets deranked, deplatformed, banned, and shadow banned, it doesn't really matter, because he has enough reach through various different channels that his message will get out.
Right.
For a small business that had not crossed that threshold, let's call it escape velocity.
Okay.
If you've not crossed that threshold, you getting banned, shadow banned, demonetized, deplatformed, any of those things.
All the D's.
All of those. All of those can adversely affect your business and are essentially a death sentence, because for an online business, and honestly, even more and more for in-person businesses, that is the way of discovery.
So I can guess the kind of companies that would be involved in this stuff uh, are mostly the larger ones uh, and the most popular ones. So your typical person looking up discount shoes near me is probably going to go to this search engine. So I could see how that would probably affect a business. Um, you know, where do I get gay cakes made by Christians? Something like that. Which also is a untapped market, by the way. Or if we could get underpaid, desperate Christians, we could just hire Christians that don't want to make cakes but need the money so bad, and all we do is gay wedding cakes. And the gay people just get to watch the Christians fight internally as they make the cake.
Oh, is that what they mean by gay for pay?
That's it. This discussion here just came up. Anybody in our chat, take that business and run with it. It's like sweatshop, but on a spiritual level.
Ooh,
Love it.
spiritual sweatshop sounds like a Sunday morning radio show with
It's like church and yoga pants. Yoga church.
yo gospel. Anyway,
I'm telling you, man. Public, if we were born 30 years earlier, we'd have been running public broadcast.
you all better thank your lucky stars that we weren't born 30 years ago.
Because now I'm just having to listen to this algorithm that has told people that we're hid us from people because we are misinformation. For how long now have we been doing this podcast?
Dude, time is a blur. But yeah, I agree. There's a difference between calling us something that we can either prove we are or are not. Which is why I do have to give props to Spotify in this regard, because they've not removed our episodes, but they have tagged them.
We get the COVID. If you want to learn about COVID, you can click this little blue bar.
Right, and that's fine, because as you learn about those things, you can make your own call.
Mm-hmm.
And in all fairness, if you click those links now, they actually mirror what we were saying in those episodes then. But
Mm-hmm.
I think
it says in there now but what they're saying now is wrong. Okay, they did get that other stuff right, but it was pure accident. But what they're saying now is totally wrong.
yeah. And that in itself is a whole other episode. But I say this to kind of have 2 points. One is that I don't think we have really had the proper discussion around how this is very different for small businesses versus, a large entity.
Okay.
Because it's not about, they're a private corporation, they can do what they want. Not if their largest contract by far is a government contract. But the key piece here is what I believe to be a sign of hope, in that if something like the Twitter files, which I think is actually not that damning or at all surprising, because if you didn't think that they were doing that anyway, you weren't paying attention. But it gives me hope that something that
I disagree with you, because it's about having evidence. So while anybody with a brain knew it was happening, there wasn't the smoking gun. And at least now it's just too out there, where they're having to. I think they're having to roll back. It's not just the Twitter files, so I do agree with you to an extent, but I think the Twitter files was a large piece that probably inevitably was going to come. Maybe it came a little earlier because of it, but that made the deep state or three-letter agencies or whoever's really running the show go, oh, we need to give them some stuff in our outlets that they got right, because if we don't, we're going to lose them forever. We need to try to get them back, believe in us again, because we've overplayed our hand. At least that's what I think is going on. I think they're trying to get their get confidence back in them by sacrificing, say, Joe Biden, or things that almost everybody knew were the case. Let's go. Yeah, that was the case. So yeah, I mean it's a white pill in the sense that people are waking up to the point that they can't hide it anymore. Because what was happening when COVID was going on, was, you remember we had discussions about this when they were still trying to lock people down. There were festivals going on that were completely sold out, just overcrowded, awesome events, right? And then if you went on the search engines and looked for the event, it wasn't even on there. Like, it never even happened. So
So your take is that we're not getting unshadow banned because of them coming around to things. You're saying that they have been told to ease off?
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think
Well,
that
and maybe I misstated that. Not that they're coming around. It's not that they're necessarily seeing reason. I think it's more that they just don't want to be caught doing that. But
I think the whole apparatus is trying to protect itself. There's no faith in the system anymore. Into their outlets of propaganda, and they're trying to get something back. Because I do feel like they believe, and I hope they're right, that they're losing the people. Does that make sense? Am I saying that right? Like your CNNs, your Fox News, your MSNBC, your NBC, your ABC News, all that. I think they're, even the people on the people on Twitter who are just spitting the CIA bullshit. The people aren't with it. And I think it's to a point now that they're like, we can't hide how many people aren't with it. Because before they were pretending like they were the majority and they would hide everybody. But I think with Twitter, just one place not doing that at least as much, it's let the cat out of the bag. That's why the co-ops, like or not the co-ops, but like what'd they call it? Where a bunch of the big companies would get together and they would agree that their prices wouldn't exceed this percentage or whatever. And one company would break that, and it would ruin the whole thing. There only has to be one company or one. If they silence everybody but one, or every outlet but one, that one outlet will ruin the whole thing for them. Because propaganda is, while it can be very effective, it's still just a house of cards. And I think they see that and they're panicking a little.
well, and isn't that a good thing? Isn't that the kind of unrest we would hope to see? Because again, I'm not all that surprised by the things we saw with the Twitter files. But I wasn't surprised by Snowden either. These were all sort of open secrets that people would talk about. But to your point, it was just getting the proof.
Yeah. I think that Snowden, Assange, WikiLeaks, all of that, which was, decades ago, right? It it has led to this, I think. I think that the Twitter files was like it's a turning point, I think, in the propaganda or in the effectiveness of our media propaganda unit in the US. Not so much that people believed it any more yesterday than they do today, but the consensus, the feeling that people had was, I'm the only one who feels this way. There's not anybody else out there. You know what I mean? And then now you're seeing, oh, wow, they're the minority. These are just the elites trying to hold us back, hold our voices down so we don't realize that we have other people on our side. And yes, you're right. This is exactly what we want. We want to win like this. We don't want to win violently. We don't want to do stuff like go to the Capitol and go inside and fart on Nancy Pelosi's desk. While that shit is very funny to me, it has no lasting good effect. While it may make me feel good to see somebody do that, what it's done is put naive people behind bars, strengthened the FBI's understanding on how to manipulate U.S. citizens. It has taken the life of multiple innocent people, innocent to the extent that they didn't deserve to be killed. Only one was killed. The other two had heart attacks from the pressure, and then I think the one cop, he didn't die there, but he had a stroke that day, and he ended up dying later in a hospital, not due to the stroke. And then another one died on duty like a month later. For some reason, they refer to him in the news as dying during Jan 6 by Jan 6 or whatever. My point is that didn't have a liberty outcome for the most part. Now, it may have done some good because other people saw that and were like, oh, wow, there is a lot of people that felt maybe like the elections may not be totally secure. If you're that kind of person who just started to feel that way, well, I am very happy that you are questioning stuff. Wow. I can't. I don't think I've ever gone to an election booth and voted and been like, man, this seems like it's legit. I've always come out going, yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, we're just all questioning the system, and they can't hide it anymore. So thank you, whatever search engine, for maybe keeping us on a list, but at least letting people see us now. Hopefully more people see us and you realize that the United States government, while it may be your friend right now, it's not always going to be what it is today. you might want to have the people on your side.
And maybe I'm just saying this for my own edification, but it's possible there are people out there like me who saw the Twitter files and sort of assessed them in isolation, in that there wasn't really a smoking gun in there or anything all that surprising, but it clearly had an impact somewhere, and it's creating these ripple effects. And I suppose I just didn't give it enough credit for what it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess I'm saying this as
People.
advice to myself as well as anyone who kind of sees it the same way, in that you can't look at it in a vacuum, because it's not about just what it is. It's about what it represents and these knock-on effects.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's about what... It's not... Because Twitter's already not doing it, because that's why he's putting out the Twitter file. If he's going to continue to do it, he would have never put out the Twitter files, right? But it's about what that causes the other guys to do. Because if they don't straighten up, they're just going to become nobody. So it affects everybody. Just like competition is a wonderful thing, like real competition, because I mean, if you look at it as, say, a fast food joint instead of Twitter, you know, if all of a sudden they were like, came out that, say, Twitter restaurant said, "Oh, look, this meat that we've been serving you is shit. And this is how bad it is. Here's a bunch of things, and you know, we're under new management now. We're going to be serving, you know, grade, let's just say A meat from now on, and this is what's in grade A meat." And then you start looking around and you're like, well, the same trucks that were going to Twitter delivering meat before are going to all these other people. You're like, ooh, I bet they're serving that shit meat. So I'm going to go eat at Twitter, because I know now they got grade A meat. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just in the information sphere. And it works, man. The free market works. It'll straighten shit out. It's that government that gets in there and forces it. Government has to use force. So if they don't, then they can't do these things. Whether they force me by gunpoint to give them enough money that they can buy off everybody, or they just stick a gun to somebody's head and just tell them to do the things. They have to use force. They don't have any other means. And like wise man once said, it's like, it doesn't really matter what side of the social issue you're on. The moment you start using force to make other people do it, you're the bad guy.
Yeah. I mean, because I just think about other things that were stifled at the same time. Even though I'm not a fan, I don't believe they should be minimized and deranked by threat of violence. Mm-hmm. Like I noticed the Barstool Sports guys, they were talking about how as soon as Elon took over, their Twitter engagement all came back, which shows that they had been sort of deranked there for a little while. And I find all those folks super annoying, and I was probably better off having less Barstool Sports in my feed, but I don't think that was a net positive if that was happening under threat of violence.
No, it's not. And honestly, they pretend as if I hear something, I'm so fragile and stupid. If I hear a bad idea, this is what gets me about their excuse for why they do it. It's not even the real reason. This is the excuse they use. Is that there are some ideas out there that are too dangerous because you, being a person, a regular civilian, are too stupid to understand the outcomes of, let's say, believing something. You're too stupid to make your own decisions. So that's your excuse for these things. That's the lie that you're telling us. That's not even the real reason. That's the lie. It breaks down to you are saying that we're too dumb to make decisions for ourselves.
Well, because that's grounded in a kernel of truth, in that there is so much information out there that no person can take all of that information and properly distill it into knowing everything.
Right. But unfortunately for them, that is the reason why the free market works. Is because everybody gets to try all these things, and very quickly, because everybody's trying all these different things, very quickly people figure out what works and what doesn't. Because everybody's not made to do one wrong thing. And you don't even know why it's wrong because you're just all doing the same thing.
Okay, so then here's a theory. Is it possible
Okay.
that in a free market world, we would be number one for our first 10 episodes, then be on page 3, and then over the course of a year, build back up to be maybe in the top 10 results, and then nearly overnight go to number 2 or 3?
In a free market world?
Yeah.
We probably wouldn't have enough to talk about.